your first instinct is like, what, I need to be doing something. I need to get supper ready. I need to clean up. I need to, right? And I just reminded myself all the time, there's nothing more important than feeding my baby right now. There's nothing more important than this moment. And if this is the only time I'm going to experience this with my child, then I want to soak in every minute of it.
Welcome to the Empower and Evolve podcast, a space where we will explore topics ranging from mindset to career to business, energetics, spirituality, cyclical living, and beyond. I am your host, Kat Tunnyberg. I am a mindset coach and integrative practitioner on a mission to help you take your life from meh to magical. Without further ado, let's plunge into today's episode. In this episode of the Empower and Evolve podcast, I am joined by the beautiful Jaimie Fleuty, who is a mindfulness coach and a mom. And Jaimie and I have a bit of a history, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it in a moment, but I want to tell you more about Jaimie. Jaimie is a former social worker who, after experiencing burnout, embarked on a transformative journey of personal development and entrepreneurship. With a deep commitment to living authentically and a relentless thirst for knowledge, she has become a holistic lifestyle and mindset coach. And as the creator of her signature program, Mindfully You, she empowers individuals to reconnect with their true selves and lead more mindful lives, balancing her professional pursuits with the joys and challenges of being a toddler mom. She brings a unique perspective to her work and life. And in this podcast episode, we talk about her journey from social worker to where she is now. We talk about how becoming a mom actually started her journey of mindfulness and how during the different phases of becoming a mom, she tapped into mindfulness and how that helped her and how that supported her. And we speak about the importance of mindfulness as a mom and just all those juicy topics in between. And I know Jaimie back from my Juice Plus days. She was part of my team, and both me and her were in very different phases of our lives back then. Like we even mentioned it in the podcast. We were like very proud of each other for surviving each other. We were very much living in our masculine, and I very much saw Jaimie as a go, 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 go person. And I was a go, 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 go person. And it's beautiful to see how we have both evolved since and to still be connected and to see her absolutely smash life and business and just live this really beautiful life with her family. I'm excited for you to dive into this episode. Welcome to another episode of the Empower and Evolve podcast. Today I have Jaimie here with me, which I'm so excited about. Jaimie and me have a bit of a history. And today we are going to be talking about such an amazing topic, mindfulness and being a mom and the importance of mindfulness as a mom. Thank you for being here, Jaimie. I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
This is going to be so great. Let's start with, tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? Where are you from? What has been your journey to get you to where you are today?
Yeah. So, oh, such a long one, right? Because it's like everything impacts where I am today. But so I grew up in a small northern Manitoba town. So it gets cold, super cold in the winter, and we always had just, I guess, small groups of people that you know everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went to university because that was one of those things where it was like growing up my whole life. Well, you go to university, right? And I got my degree in social work after I think I had 6 years of schooling because I didn't actually know what I wanted to do. I just kind of
Mm-hmm.
followed the paces of like, you go to university, that's what you do. And so I went and kind of shifted what I wanted to take and what I wanted to do while I was there. And so it took a little bit longer, but I got my social work degree. And I started working in the field and it wasn't really clicking with me, I guess you
Mm-hmm.
could say. I got burned out in a couple different jobs within it. And then I kind of started on my journey towards entrepreneurship. And
Mm-hmm.
it really, I guess, lit a spark in me in the sense of personal development and I mean social work in itself, like getting your social work degree is like they scrape the layers of you as you're going through it.
Right.
But I think it was different learning it from, I guess, an institution versus like really like digging and being ready to dig into that personal development. So I did a lot of that when we were in the business, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And it's when you know something, you can't unknow it, right?
Yeah.
It's so yeah, it just kind of kept going, and eventually I decided I kind of wanted to go out on my own, and now I'm coaching and yeah, and I have my own program now, which I've ran once already, and I'm getting excited and opening it up to run it again for the second time. But yeah, that's my, I guess that's my work
Mm.
experience. So it's not really me, but I'm also a mom of a little toddler now, which is wild still to me. And I spend all my time outside if I can, as much as possible outside, doing all the different things that you can do and being in nature and just soaking it all in.
I love that. Nature is so healing. I just went on
Hmm.
an impromptu like 5 p.m. hike yesterday evening and it was like so, so healing. So,
Hmm.
yeah. I actually want to talk a little bit about the transition and like what it was like to go from being a social worker to deciding to go out on your own. And even if you want to chat a little bit about your time when we were both doing Juice Plus and stuff, like whatever you feel kind of resonates, because, and this is just my perception of it, I don't know, but it seems like quite often the women I know who have gone into work like social work or even therapist counselors, it often ends up burning them out. Like it just
Hmm.
seems like there is like something in the system that isn't really supporting you to make sure that you're looking after yourselves whilst you're carrying the weight of everyone else. So if you're open to
Hmm.
share a little bit about what
Yeah.
that was like.
So what I found was it's the systems for the
Hmm.
most part that I struggled with the most, I think. And I've always been someone who, if something doesn't click or something could be done a little bit better, or I think like it's not right, then I'll speak up or like ask questions about like why do we do it this way? And I never really got any good answers, or I got brushed off, or I got told
Mm-hmm.
like this is the way we do it, or it just was not good at all kind of thing. But
Hmm.
yeah, so that part of it I think was the hardest part for me. I think I probably could have lasted in the industry more if I was in a position where my superiors were supportive, where they listened to what I had to say, if they had that same drive to make, I guess, the systems better. And which is hard because like even uh, this sticks in my brain so hard, and I think about it all the time. But one of our professors in school actually said, "Don't get into this job thinking that you're going to change the world." And
Wow.
it blew it, like even just thinking about it today, I think about it all the time, and I'm like, why would they
Wow.
say that? When we're going into such an influential position, usually when you
Hmm.
are in social work, you're working with such vulnerable people. Why not change the world? Why not make a big impact in the jobs that you're doing, right?
Mm.
But the unfortunate thing is that, yeah, we are in that helping role. We are often burning ourselves out trying to help in a system that's working against us, and also we're working against the people who are trying to get better or improve their lives. And so it's not only us who are burnt out, it's our superiors and our managers. And it ended up being when I was in my last position, we didn't have a manager and we didn't have a director. And I was like, if anything happened to any of my clients, who's going to have my back right now? Nobody. Nobody's going to have my back. And if there's another way that I can help people where I feel like I'm actually going to make a difference and be able to make a difference in the way that I feel is right, or I feel like is going to be a little bit past maybe this system, then I'm going to do that.
Mm. Yeah. That's so sad to hear about your superiors and then that guy. Like it's so wild to me how people like to put their own limiting beliefs on people and just like
Mhm.
dump them on them and be like, oh well, that's like you
Yeah.
that might be like your thing, but no,
No, no. And
no.
like to a whole class of social workers who, yeah, are going into
Yeah.
these like really important jobs and yeah.
And especially, is it true that like northern Manitoba, there's a lot of mental health stuff happening there, isn't it?
Yeah, anything like addiction, mental
Yeah.
health, and we have very, very limited resources up
Mm.
here. And it really, I think a lot of it is because we do have a very high Indigenous population as
Mhm.
well. And and you see it getting better in the sense of more cultural, I guess, programs and more where their communities are really trying to support themselves and everything else.
Mhm.
But there's so many of those old ways of thinking, like mindsets and stuff, and it's such an intergenerational
Yeah.
problem, right?
Yeah.
It's so intergenerational that it's
Yeah.
not going to be solved tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So, um, not that it can be solved, but
Yeah.
it's to be able to heal yourself, like even just thinking of my own family and like in different introspection and stuff and thinking of like the different generations of women who have maybe dealt with certain things in their lives and how it's impacted influenced me in my life. That's, let's say, three generations that I look at, whereas you look at like the indigenous population, how many different cycles
Yeah.
of it went through, right?
It's so
So sad.
sad to yeah, and they often lack the resources to be able to get the support that they need. It's really saddening.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm very
Mhm.
glad that you looked after yourself though, because ultimately that's, what we have to do is we have to put ourselves first. And especially those
Mhm.
of us who are like wanting to make a difference and we want to help people, like we need to make sure
Mhm.
that we look after ourselves because otherwise
Yeah.
how can we look after others? So I'd love to know why mindfulness, like out of all the coaching
Mhm.
modalities, like everything that we can do, how did you land on mindfulness being the thing that you were like, I'm going to run with this and I'm going to teach this to people and I'm going to make a difference through teaching mindfulness?
Yeah. Again, it's one of those big answers, right? I've just found that throughout my experience with learning about mindfulness or utilizing mindfulness in my life, I realized how much it impacted everything and just the way I live in general, right? And a big part of mindfulness, or one of the biggest, see where you need a little bit more and where you need a little bit less, right? It helps you even in that situation of where I'm burning out. I could have potentially supported myself in seeing like and recognizing, oh, this is where I'm at, and this is how I can support myself. So I guess it's in a roundabout way, it's just being aware of how things impact me. It's being aware of the present moment and feeling gratitude for it. It's non-judgment, so it's not judging my own story along the way or judging other people and their experiences. It's just truly trying to get back to that core authenticity that we all have and getting back to knowing what I truly want for my life versus what I kind of went along with the motions of, right? And I mean, every experience we have leads us to where we are, and that's important, that's great. But it's being able to be intentional, I guess, with where I want to go next. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I guess it's more just mindfulness. The more I dug into it, the more I recognized it in everything that I did. So, just being mindful of how I spend my time. It's mindful of my relationships, my connections, how I talk to people, the words that I use. It's being mindful of what I'm consuming, even down to like what products am I putting on my body. And it's self-compassion, and it's just getting out of that autopilot and getting out of just, yeah, going through the motions over and over again, right? So that's kind of, I guess, the impact that it's had on me, on like how can I be more intentional with my life and live my life to the fullest and know that I'm living my life to the fullest and in the most authentic expression that I can.
I love that. And I love that you touched on that autopilot because I feel like that
Mm-hmm.
is probably the biggest enemy of mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Us just
Yeah.
living in autopilot, and yet it's so easy. I'm reading Joe Dispenza's books Becoming Supernatural right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he literally talks about it in there of like, we wake up, we have the same thoughts, we do the exact same things, and we just relive basically our past over and over again because we're just having the same emotions, we're saying the
Mm-hmm.
same words. And it's like, are we even like in control of our own lives? You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yep.
it's
Absolutely.
just like, it's
Yep.
wild.
And that's where you can use mindfulness to recognize like what are my habits,
Mhm.
right? And that's where like we all need habits. We can't be mindful, like 100% mindful all the time. Otherwise our brains would probably explode from all the information, right? Our habits are allowing us to maintain and continue, but um I just did a habit workshop where we talked about that, where we can still have these habits, but as long as we're mindful and aware of what these habits are and how they're impacting us in the long run, then that's where it changes the narrative, right?
Mhm.
And but it's also being mindful of like what are we consuming that's going to shift the way our mindset is and shift the way we kind of present ourselves in the world. And it does on such an unconscious level that we don't even realize until you start to dig a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And that's that curiosity piece of mindfulness that I just love.
Yeah, I love that as well. I love to be curious in general and like the
Hmm.
awareness piece. I often say, like in anything I teach, it starts with awareness because
Hmm.
until you're aware that you have a problem, even that you live
Yep.
on autopilot, you can't change it.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So
Yep.
tell me about your journey now that you're a beautiful mama and how mindfulness has played a role in that journey. Because I can
Yeah.
imagine I'm not a mom, so I have obviously no idea of like lived experience, but I can imagine that it's uproots your life, like uproots it and it changes it completely. So how have you utilized mindfulness and what part has mindfulness played in this part of your life?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, like I said, mindfulness was kind of a part of my life even before all of this, like
Hmm.
through my social work, like when I was working in mental health, through personal development. But I think it really started to settle when I got pregnant. Um,
Hmm.
I was always that like go, 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 busy, 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 never stop, have to like have something to drive towards like at all times. Like that was kind of like my speed is always way up here. And
Yeah.
it was when I got pregnant, it's almost like I felt this internal shift. And it was just to slow down and to just savor my time. And my partner and I, we don't plan to have a second child, but we didn't plan to get pregnant. So it was one of those things where it was like such a shock, but I was like, okay, if this is the one and only time that I'm going to experience pregnancy, whether it was a shock or not, I need to savor this. I need to really experience it and see, like, get everything that I can from it, right? And so I think during pregnancy, that was a big time where I slowed down for the almost like the first time in my life. And even even as a kid and stuff too. And I think part of it is I later in life realized that I had ADHD and I that was just my tempo at all times. But yeah, when I got pregnant, it I just knew it was a necessity, I guess. And then when she was born, it just kind of snowballed from there in lots of different ways on where I was like, okay, well, how can I keep this pace or what is this pace that I'm kind of feeling out right now? And so even if so when she was first born, newborn, you're sitting on the couch all the time, you're nursing, you're kind of like stuck lots of times, sitting for
Hmm.
hours and hours during the day. And I mean, this is my story. This might not be everyone's, but lots of people that I talk to, that's the same. And your first instinct is like, what, I need to be doing something. I need to get supper ready. I need to clean up. I need to, right? And I just reminded myself all the time, there's nothing more important than feeding my baby right now. There's nothing more important than this moment. And if this is the only time I'm going to experience this with my child, then I want to soak in every minute of it. I don't want to forget it. And it just every stage of her life, I tried to remind myself of that because it happens so quickly and you get told this by everyone like, oh, it happens so fast and they're grown up, but you don't realize it until you're in it. You're like, whoa, like she's literally changing every single day and I don't want to miss a single thing of what's happening right now. So that was a big one. And just yeah, just soaking in the moments with her. And then it turned into even deeper than that, paying attention to what are our boundaries as a family, right? So as I'm sitting there on the couch, I'm digging deeper and deeper on like being mindful of, well, what are my boundaries? What are our values? How can I hold these boundaries as a family and do that for her as a family, being that like sturdy parent, right? And how are my words influencing her on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
Because we after you kind of dig into like what are the words that are influencing me and my like subconscious, right? Then it's what are the words that are also influencing her? Because they're like little sponges, especially now she's a toddler. And it's just like every single little thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's getting into the depth of every little piece of how I can be mindful of my time with her, have fun with her. Like I think even as I was a young kid, lots of the time I felt like I grew up really fast. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if it's because my parents divorced when I was around 10, if that
Mm-hmm.
impacted it in a big way. Um, but I was an only child as well, so I always spent a lot of time around adults. So I feel like I grew up really quickly, and playing was never like when I think of like play, I it almost makes me feel uncomfortable sometimes. So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. So I've been really digging into like how can I be more playful and how can I play
Uh-huh.
with her and be present in that moment with her and it's so interesting to like watch how she learns and
Uh-huh.
play is one of the most important things when it comes to learning for kids, right? So that in itself I'm like, okay, well, I need to be invested in playing with her, right? Um yeah, and that was a big one. And just not wishing away my time with her because so often people be like, oh, this will pass. It's hard, but it'll pass. Just wait till she's this old, or wait till she's
Right.
that old, or oh, you get to be a big kid now, right? And I said to my partner, I was like, why do we say things like that? Like we're literally saying like, oh, it's gonna be better when you're older.
Uh-huh.
It's gonna be better when you hit this milestone, right? Why can't we
And then
just
at the
kind of
same
save it?
time, it's like, but when you get old, you're gonna have this
Yeah,
illness and this illness and
right?
this. I'm like,
I know, like our whole childhood we're wishing it away so that we older because when we're older we can do this and when we're older we can do that. But then when we get older we're like, whoa, this was a scam.
yeah,
Like I did not account for this part of this.
it's so it's so
Yeah.
contradictory.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I really love hearing this story because I actually didn't know that that's what really impacted you to find that
Hmm.
way to mindfulness. And to me, because obviously, like my biggest thing that I teach on is feminine embodiment and
Hmm.
mindset. So to me, when I'm hearing this story, it just sounds like you're really learning to soften into the feminine for the first time,
Hmm.
probably in your life.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
And I can relate to this because even when you're sharing your story of, always being go, 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 having like a million goals on the go and like feeling like I recognize myself in that. And I recognize almost every freaking woman I've ever worked with
Yeah.
in that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And even like thinking of those generational kind of cycles, like the women
Hmm.
in my life run very masculine
Yeah.
energy, very masculine energy. So like I know where it comes from.
Mhm.
It's just, yeah, it was a big shift in running into the feminine and like really learning that
Mm.
because and even now as she's getting a little bit older, she's getting a little more independent on her own and stuff. And getting back into business and stuff, I really have to be mindful of those energies because I can feel the masculine really trying to like take hold, but I know that there's so much power in that feminine as
Yeah.
well. And that's where even just the creativity part of it and that playfulness, like I said, like those are so important. So yeah, it's trying to find that balance all the time, right? Of
Yeah.
where we're at.
Because it
And
is
that's
the
another
balance.
mindfulness. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a balance, and the balance is looking different from person to person. We can only figure out through trial and error.
Yeah. No, exactly.
I love that you talked into play as well. I actually, yesterday on the hike, we were talking a lot about play and desire and pleasure and making time for that in our lives. Because my girlfriend is also on a big journey of just really tapping into that part of her life.
Yeah.
And I asked her a question, or she asked me. I can't remember who asked who, but I remember like having a question and having a conversation. When I ask you that same question, what is play to you?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think play like when I think of like experiencing play, it's it's just not structured. It's feeling like joy without that structure. It's learning but not in a structural way, I guess, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's another way of it's exploring. It's exploring and it's learning and it's yeah, just it to me I feel like it is in a lot of ways a feminine way of
Mm-hmm.
approaching it because it is that playfulness
Yeah.
and just kind of carefree and that's so not where I was in my life for so long, right? And because it was very it had to be this way, it had to be that way. It was structured. It was you have to re meet this potential, right? And so there wasn't time for like having fun and playing. I mean, I did in different ways, I guess you could say, but the the creativity side of it and stuff, not as much, I guess, or like the unstructured kind of way of doing it. But when I did get in that place, and lots of time I guess I could say like I don't know if I would consider it play, but it would be like say if I was out snowboarding or
Mm-hmm.
I was driving like a skidoo or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I find myself singing a song or like just going like do 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 do, and I don't realize I'm doing it
Uh-huh.
until I'm like in that moment. And that's that like joy piece of
Yeah.
like I'm playing and I'm feeling the I don't know. But I think that's more when I think of it as an adult. When I think of play as a kid, I think of it as that exploring piece, as
Mm-hmm.
that learning piece of that like connecting the dots on like how we can problem solve in the future and really like create connections and even just being with other kids or being with other people and stuff as well and creating those relationships and interpersonal relationships. And that's the piece that I find that's so, so important, especially with my daughter. But I don't know. I want to hear your answer.
Well, my answer was more actually like, what is play to me? Like, what are some activities? But I love that you
Yeah,
actually really went into like more the broader kind of
the
aspect of it.
feeling of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I totally agree with everything you said. It's that being in the moment and that almost like seeking the surprise of I don't know what's gonna happen. It's almost like letting this your
Hmm.
guard down and just allowing yourself to be and like
Hmm.
just expressing yourself in ways that you may not always do. I said like part of the ways that I tap into play and what I play for me is like dancing, being silly with my husband, being silly with my girlfriends,
Hmm.
just like having a dance party at home whilst I'm cooking dinner,
Hmm.
being creative, being in nature, playing with my dog, like those kind of
Yeah.
activities.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just like
Totally.
bringing more of that into my daily life.
Hmm.
And
And I
sometimes,
think too, it's being yourself.
Yeah.
right? 100% yourself and carefree, not thinking of like
Mhm.
all of the other things that can kind of weigh us down, right?
Mhm. Yeah, it's so true. And I love that you also touched on the subject of like now that you're getting back into business activities and noticing that those past patterns of like that
Mm-hmm.
masculine wanting to take over are like coming up. And I actually recently did a poll on my Instagram because I'm just curious, and I had to like think like, what do you find you struggle with more? Is it strategies or energetics in your business? And I think it was literally like 91% of people said strategies. And to me, that just shows like, yeah, of course we need strategies in our business,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like that just again, that system of like everything has to be like masculine doing strategies. And
Yeah.
yes, there is a place for it, but until we actually get our energetics in control, we're not going to actually achieve the goals we want. Like one
Yeah.
of my mentors, Jaimie C, she teaches that business is 80% energetics and only 20% strategies.
Yeah. I
And
totally believe that.
me too, because I started to
Mm-hmm.
reflect on my journey of the last 7.5 years. And like even thinking back to the times when I was more active in network marketing and Juice Plus, and even when I was your mentor back then, bless you
Mm-hmm.
for surviving that stage of my life.
Well, you with me too. So
But
we're
I was
both in our
just
masculine.
oh, so stuck in our masculine. Oh my goodness. And I didn't experience the success that I experience now.
Mm,
But now I focus so much more on the energetics and like
mm,
really focusing on me and filling my cup and what lights me up and leading from that place instead of
mhm.
following someone else's step-by-step plan on how I have to live my life and build my business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw that poll and I don't know if I voted on it, but I saw it and I think I reflected on it and that's I might not have even voted because I was reflecting too much. But when I thought about it, because I probably would have voted strategy before, but then when I was thinking like I've how many times have I tried to get strategy and have been given strategy and like gone through strategy and like I have it all in my hands, but never actually utilized it or never got the to where I wanted to go with it, right? And I
Yeah.
guess like not everyone wants to say like, oh, my energetics, right? Because there's so much that plays into our energetics when it comes to just how am I holding myself back? And
Yeah.
even when I like messaged you about the podcast and stuff, it was like I need to get out of my own way because
Mm-hmm.
this is something that I'm holding myself back on. And I
Mm-hmm.
know I'm doing that. So I just need to do it. And sometimes we're gonna have to do it scared, but that's okay. We just have to like
Mm-hmm.
push through it. But
Mm-hmm.
that's that interview piece as well. It's just where am I at so that I can be confident enough to be like, let's just do it, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
And allowing like what one of my other teachers always says, there's no failure, there's only feedback. And
Hmm.
I really love that. And I wish more of us could really embrace that. Because if we think back to play, like that is very much play. Because like in
Hmm.
play, you may like fall down and you may like have an
Yeah.
accident. It may not work out like you want it, but you learn through that.
Yeah.
So if we could bring more of that just into all areas of our life and just allow ourselves to have these so-called failures, but have fun with
Hmm.
it, life would be so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes right down to like what are the expectations that I hold for myself, but like a lot of the time when I was reflecting on it or like digging deeper with that mindfulness piece is like what expectations am I still holding onto myself from other people as well? Like where do I need that external validation that I throughout my whole life needed, but I don't need it anymore because I need that validation for myself and those expectations they might look like they're from other people, but it's really just me projecting them from other people, right? So how can I create different expectations in a way that doesn't hold you to an impossible standard? Because we're all just like what's that saying? I don't want to say throwing shit at the wall, but like that's what we're doing, right? It's just we're all on this journey. We're all trying to figure out what's going to feel right and what's going to work best and how we can go through life and make the biggest impact in a lot of ways, especially as coaches.
Yeah.
But we all, at the end of the day, want to feel fulfilled and happy.
Mm-hmm.
As simple as that. We want to feel fulfilled and happy. And we complicate it so much. And it gets even muddier when we think of how everyone else plays a role in our life, when at the end of the day, we play the biggest role and we
Yeah.
choose who influences the rest of it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, tough though. That's my biggest work for sure.
Oh, I think that it's probably most of our biggest work. I
Mhm.
actually just reflected this myself. This last full moon was hectic for me.
Oh. Mhm.
I had
Oh.
so many things come up, and I was like, oh my God, here we go again.
Yeah.
And again, just like noticing where I was telling myself stories that I had to do things a certain way instead of feeling into what feels right for me.
Hmm.
And I had to take myself through this whole revelation. And then once I had all my realization, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this full moon was hard for me too. I felt it so much.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's good. It's good. And that's another thing, like even like with mindfulness and in my program that we talk about is just like this isn't a bad thing. When you bring this awareness and you feel all these things, that's not a bad thing. It's a message, and we get to decide what we're going to do with that message and how we can improve it and move forward with it,
Yeah.
right? And that in itself is great. Like if we don't get those messages, we can't improve. We
Yeah.
can't move forward. We're just going to be stuck in that
Mhm.
autopilot. And I think that's where people do get stuck, or how I've gotten stuck is that I don't want to face it. I don't want to
Mhm.
face it. I just gonna keep going through the cycles of this because this is easy and comfortable.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's not
Yeah.
easy and
It's
it's
not
not actually
easy.
comfortable. So
Exactly. It's
yeah,
fascinating though how often I actually have conversations with potential new clients and they literally tell me that they're afraid of actually looking at their own shit
yeah,
and that they're not ready to face it. I'm like, girlfriend, like if you're not ready now, like when are you gonna be ready?
yeah, yeah,
Like it's never gonna be like you're never gonna be ready. Like it's still gonna
no,
hit you. And even like after years of doing this work, there's still gonna be times when you're like, oh my
yeah,
God.
no, 100%. And yeah, you could do all the work and you're still going to feel those cycles trying to play
Mhm.
themselves out over and over again. And the difference is that the more awareness that you have, the more you can kind of choose how you're going to react to it or regulate yourself afterwards. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So true. What would you say are some of your favorite activities to tap into mindfulness now that you're a mom? And, like maybe you can even share into like what it was like when she was a baby versus now a toddler so that other moms who are listening can kind of like, because I've heard it with moms. I am too busy. I have no time for this. So maybe you can kind of like share some simple strategies
yeah,
to
yeah.
incorporate mindfulness.
So the biggest thing is definitely like your mindset when it comes around it, and just recognizing what your priorities are, I guess,
Mhm.
too. And just being really clear on what are your values? What do you value? Because when you become a parent, there's literally everyone and their dog want to give you advice on what you should be doing and how you should
Uh-huh.
be doing it. And so if you're very clear on like what your values are and as a family, what boundaries you need to set, that'll set you up even just to start with. But then some of the other things that I really utilized were just simple things like deep breathing, right? Deep breaths, especially in moments when they were really hard and she is having big feelings and is reminding myself like, yeah, this is hard on me, but imagine how it is for her,
Hmm.
right? Or like even just when she's learning to talk, but she can't talk, like, could you imagine being a
Mm.
tiny little body trying to explain yourself to your parent who's the person you love the most and they can't tell you, right? Like how frustrating would that be? And so it's just really getting into that perspective. But it's those deep breaths, just kind of coming back to like, this is hard, but I I'm a strong mom. I'm a good mom. This is this is just her going through something. Understanding that it's not about me. It's about her. It's understanding her cues, just trying to listen and really be mindful of like what is she telling me, right? Because they don't need to use words all the time. They can give you those cues and you know best. So one of the biggest things was really just tapping into my intuition and that feminine side of like, okay, what are my needs right now? Like, why am I reacting? Because if I have met my needs for the most part, or if I can find a way to meet my needs, then I'm not going to react as strongly. And what are her needs and how can I meet those needs in a way that is safe and comfortable for her? But so breathing is a big one, recognizing those signs. And then I one of the things with that I've been learning through just learning more about like ADHD and stuff as well is just I have a hard time remembering things sometimes, like being able to keep things in my my mind and being able to uh recount different things. So one of the things that I've been really trying to like utilize is just like my five senses when I am in certain situations so that I can like if I'm really presently there and really bring them in, it's almost like draw them onto myself, then I find I do remember them better. So it's just tapping into those five senses of like, what do I feel? What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? What do I taste? Right. And so when I'm nursing her to bed or cuddling her or whatever it is, then it's just like trying to be there. And it's even when I'm playing with her too. If I'm feeling like I'm overwhelmed, when I can get into those five senses, then I'm there. I'm really like paying attention to like what's happening. And it doesn't it gets me out of my head, I guess. It gets me out of my head and more into my body and it gets me present beside her there. So those are probably my biggest ones. And they're the most simple is just breathing and my five senses. And then
Yeah.
the rest kind of comes along with it because when you start to dig into those and you start to realize like yeah, this is fine. Like I can get through this. This is okay. And she's going through something and she's learning. We're all
Yeah.
learning. But
I love that. I love me some simple advice.
yeah, yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
I remember being in mental health and learning some of these tools and stuff and being like, this is so ridiculous. Like, why can't we teach them like some like legit things that are gonna like make a difference in their life? Now I use them all the time. And it does make a difference. But I think part of it too is that the more you do it, the more like second nature it becomes
Yeah.
too. And the more I dig into my own crap,
Hmm.
the easier it is too. And like I said, like if I'm meeting my own needs and I can really recognize my own, I guess,
Hmm.
reactions to certain things, then they don't have that big of an influence on me or that big of an impact on me when it comes
Yeah.
to her stuff.
And I think it's so important because, I've done personally a lot of re healing my ch inner child and kind of going back to
Mm-hmm.
times of growing up. And I believe it's so important as a parent to learn to regulate yourself so that
Mm-hmm.
your child can feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, like your child ends up growing. This is just my personal experience growing up with overwhelmed, stressed, not
Mm-hmm.
truly available parents, and that causes like so much havoc. And of course we can't protect our children from everything, and everyone's always doing the best they can, but if you're becoming aware of these kind of things, how can you utilize this to your advantage and start to be like, okay, like how am I showing up for my kids, and what example am I setting, and how can I make
Mm-hmm.
sure I look after myself and I regulate myself so that my child can feel safe.
Yep,
Yeah.
100%. And that's the biggest thing I think is even when I was pregnant and I went to a yoga class and she had shared that I don't know where this came from or what the like legitimacy is on it, but it really stuck with me is that she said that we as mothers share an aura with our child until they're two, at least two. And that really stuck with me and resonated with me in the sense of they do feed off of us and our energies, right? And so if I can be, and this isn't just until two. This is, and I've working with families in mental health and with child protection and everything else. I've seen it where if I can be that strong, sturdy parent for them, if I can, like you said, regulate my emotions and be calm and take that deep breath and not react initially,
Yeah.
then it allows them that space. And it also shows them that I'm not afraid of their big emotions. I'm not
Yeah.
afraid of them having those big
Yeah.
reactions, and because that's scary for them in itself, right? And then to have our parents react as well, then it's like, oh, there's something wrong with me. And then that's where that shame starts to set in. And that's
Exactly.
where we kind of separate ourselves into like what I can be and what I can't be, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's been a big one for me that I keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper with is just what is my impact on her? But being able to acknowledge my impact without wanting to influence her and who she is, like at her core too. And because I keep learning more and more about just I just get her for a little while. It's not that I own her, right? And I knowing that like how much the way I grew up and stuff, how that influences her, but I don't want it to influence her that much. I want her to be herself and make her own decisions and be able to like feel confident in them without me having expectations that had impacted me as well when I was a kid. So yeah, it's wild. Like the more you dig, the more you dig, like you'll just keep finding and finding, right? But I think like even just inside my program, you start to scratch the surface and then you want to dig more,
Mhm.
right? And the more you learn, the more you're like, yeah, I want to know more about this and how I can improve this and how I can feel more fulfilled in my everyday life and feel that gratitude and just experience life instead of just seeing it. And that's been a big one, or the biggest one when it comes to just being able to experience my time with her, I guess.
Yeah. I have
And
a bit of a
yeah,
controversial question for you, so I hope it's okay
totally.
to go there.
Yeah.
What would you say is the balance of, staying strong as a parent and being able to control how you react and respond versus stuffing down your own emotions?
Yeah, totally. I think like the thing is too is that we're all human. Like some of us are going to react and we're going to yell and we're going to whatever at some point in our lives with our kids, and it's going to be a matter of tell it like coming back to it and saying, you know, I reacted in this way and that wasn't okay and I'm
Yeah.
sorry, right?
Yeah.
But it's not so much it's being able to utilize different tools too, right? And it's not so much stuffing as it is like recognizing in that moment like,
Mhm.
okay, she's feeling big feelings, I'm also feeling big feelings. Where are these feelings coming from and why am I experiencing them?
Mm.
And then unpacking it after that
Yeah.
situation, right? Like not unpacking it maybe in that moment, just being able to kind of like control
Uh-huh.
the situation and regulate myself in that moment. And then being able to come back and say, like, what is
Yeah.
this? What happened? Why did this impact me? And 90% of the time it's because I'm not looking after myself the way I need to be looking after myself, right? Or something had come up for myself. It has nothing to do with her. She did absolutely nothing wrong. It's usually my stuff, right? That's going to be coming up as these things are happening. Um, but I imagine as she gets older, it'll be a lot of just like trying to figure out and navigate both, right? But yeah, it's not so much the stuffing as, and if you are stuffing, then it is coming back, unpacking it, realizing like, and the more you unpack it, the easier in that moment it is to
Yeah.
not have to unpack it, right? So I think for me, the amount of times that I've reflected on so much, I don't find that I do get to that point very often, which is really great for like that I found I like do not want to go to that point like ever. So I've realized that yeah, I think that's impacted the amount of times that I have and like I said, 90% of the time when I have come to that point is because I haven't moved my body, I haven't eaten very well, I haven't drank any water, and I haven't slept. So
Yeah.
so those are those like main things that have impacted me and I can say like yeah, I know this is where I am and that's where we need to ask for help
Yeah.
too sometimes, right? And I'm very lucky to have a very like supportive partner and some family that lives here, but it's just finding ways that you can create a network to help support you as well. And yeah, know that we're gonna go through stuff sometimes, but
Mhm.
the more we do the work, the easier it'll become too, right?
Yeah, so true. Thank you for touching into that because I sometimes hear that from parents like, oh, but I had to just stuff my emotions down because I had to
Mhm.
like be the strong one. And I'm like, I get that. And there is a whole nother
Yeah.
side to this.
Yeah. And because those are my emotions from my own garbage. It's
Yeah.
not my emotions because of the actual situation. It's something else, right? That's triggering it.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest benefit you've gained from incorporating mindfulness into your life now as a mom?
Oh, there's so much.
Maybe the
I
top
think it's
three.
just, yeah, I think it's as simple as just being able to slow down and recognize that slowing down, I used to think that if I slowed down, then I wasn't going to be successful or I wasn't going to be able to get as much done or I wasn't going to be able to do all the things I want to do. But slowing down is really just, it's shown me that I can actually experience those things without that autopilot, without that extra little bit of just like, oh, I did it so I could cross it off my list, right? And for me, I think that's been the biggest thing is that I've slowed down enough and I was mindful enough that we as a family made a lot of decisions where I can live the life that I live right now. Like I can be home with her right now. And that in itself is such a gift. Like that is the biggest thing I could ever get. But I would never have had this if I didn't start that journey of like digging and figuring out what I really wanted and where I was in my life and that busy, busy, busy because I would have just continued doing what I was doing. And I would have continued to just plan because I thought that my schedule had to be jam packed and I mean we still catch ourselves sometimes like there's been a few times especially in the summertime right where you
Yeah.
think you like have to do all the things and we find ourselves like, oh, like we don't want to do anything right now. And that's okay. Like we don't need to do everything and anything that we possibly have to. So I think that's the biggest thing is this just the slowing down piece, but it's the having those quality moments with my daughter that I'm never gonna get back. So being able to be in those moments and watch her grow and know that I was there and can remember those moments is a really big deal because there's a lot of my childhood I don't even remember. So if I can remember hers and remember just that time I spent with her, then that in itself is like the biggest thing.
Beautiful. I love that. Tell me a little bit about your program so that the
Ooh,
listeners can
yeah.
learn as well. And we can put the link in
Yeah.
the show notes.
Sounds good. Yeah. So this is the second time I'm launching it. This is my first coaching program that I ever had, and it's like my baby. I don't know. I think I planned it in my mind for at least a year or two. So it's called Mindfully You, and it's a holistic program where we just kind of dig into all aspects of our lives. So we talk about self-love, we talk about, well, first we talk about mindfulness, obviously. That's like one of the first calls we talk about. Then we dig into like self-love, self-compassion. We talk about our connections and our relationships and how we communicate. We dig into our physical body and how we can listen to our body and like what it needs and how we can support it. We and movement, being mindful even just with our movement and how nourishing our body and how it shifts like the way that we are mindful, because there's so much research now on that too. And we talk about even just mindful consumption. So, like I said, it's not just like what we read or what we watch, it's what we put on our skin, it's how much time we're spending with certain people, and even with that energy piece we talk about as well, is like who are the energy givers and energy takers, right? And yeah, it's digging into being mindful in every aspect of our lives and creating that awareness piece when it comes to where we can reflect and where we can shift. And some of my clients that have come through it, the results that they've been giving me feedback on are just wild, and just they got a lot of what I kind of got when I was going through this process of just feeling like they have a new taste for life, or they're feeling more gratitude for everything that they have. They're spending, we had one on our last call talking about the one client that I have. She has a young daughter, and talking about how what she does influences her daughter in the sense of like she used to go on diets and stuff. And so they wouldn't make pancakes. And now they're like making pancakes and spending time together because it's such an experience and like a fun time to have together. And I did another one where it was with mindful consumption for parents as well and stuff too. So how it influences as parents and what you can do. But yeah, that's the program. It's 6 calls. I think I'm gonna do 7 calls this round, but it's digging into how we can be mindful in our day-to-day life and just really express ourselves with that authenticity that's really deep down, and without having to burn out and live on autopilot and always trying to support everyone else when we also need to support ourselves. So that's starting in September, actually. I just launched it now. And so it will be, once this podcast comes out, it'll be starting a few days after that. I have it marked down for tentatively September 12th, it'll be starting.
Ooh,
So
exciting.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I
I'm
love
so
that.
excited.
And then you'll just run it every couple of months. So like not every couple of months, but a couple times a year kind of thing, or
I don't know. This might be the last time I teach it live, but we'll see. I do really love it. I think though I might shift it a bit after this one, so
Mhm.
this might be the last time that I teach it this way,
Mm-hmm.
live. So I
Mm-hmm.
might have it so you can get it just pre-recorded, but if
Mm-hmm.
you want to be part of the lives and ask the questions, because we have a our Facebook group and stuff as well. We have all the worksheets and the workbooks to fill out and everything else. And
Cool.
yeah, it's been a journey. It's yeah, like I said, the feedback that I've been getting is just amazing on how much you can get out of life, and they're from all ages. There's women who are in the helping professions that are around my age, so around 30. There's some who are retired who are really just like finding ways to live their lives in that are still just fulfilling, and recognizing that they're slowing down, but also that they can slow down and that's okay. And to learn more about like life and how can I grow still, right? And yeah, it's been so fun. I'm so excited for this next round.
That sounds so beautiful. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that with us. Final question.
Okay.
It's always the same question I ask the guests. What is your one piece of advice from for someone who is listening and maybe curious about starting on a mindfulness journey?
Okay. My biggest piece would be you're never going to get this moment back. So be here,
Mm,
right? Be here. And it's still important to have goals. It's still important to do that work of digging in and going back to kind of see where the patterns are, but be here and recognize how that influences now.
mm,
And because yeah, we don't get this moment back. And
mm.
especially when we're with our loved ones.
Yeah.
That's You don't want to be anywhere else. You don't want to be on your phone. You don't want to watch TV. You don't want to be thinking about your to-do list or all of the other things that you think are super important. They're not important right now.
Yeah.
The
I love
people in
that
front
piece.
of you are what's important.
Yeah. And we all crave more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been so fun. We have popped your
Yay!
podcast cherry. Woo!
Yay! I'm so excited. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been so great. And for anyone listening, head to the show notes to find Jaimie's Instagram and some info about the program.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Empower and Evolve podcast. It means so much to me that you've taken time out of your day to tune in. If you're open to it, and if you love the episode, I would love to invite you to take a couple of minutes to rate and review the podcast on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. This will help me reach new audiences and share this message more broadly. And if this episode really struck a chord with you, I would like to invite you to share it on social media and tag me at It's Coach Kat so we can spread the love together. Until next time, I'll catch you there. Bye.